Well, fantastic. Hello, 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 and welcome to Intercultural Spark, that show about the spark inside you that drives you to spark change in the world through mission driven businesses and life projects. So each week we talk to a different guest with a special curiosity about how they do what they do and how they're making an impact through their business. I am your host, Deanna Schass, and I am the founder of Intercultural Talk. So today's topic is interculturalism. I am part of an intercultural, interfaith family. And I have to say, I'll never forget the first time I went to Brazil when I was meeting my mother in law, when I boldly asked her I thought I was asking her to pass the carrots. I was asking her to pass a word for a male body part instead. So, language is part of intercultural exchange, but honestly, it's only a small part. As we'll find out today from our guest, Christian Höferle. So Christian he's a cultural a coach, he's a trainer, he's a mentor for people who work globally. He is based in Atlanta. He is German by passport, Bavarian by heart, and people call him the culture guy. So, Christian, welcome to Intercultural Spark.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Let's spark this puppy up. That's awesome. I'm curious,
Yeah.
what did your Brazilian, was it mother-in-law,
Yes.
respond when you asked for what you thought were carrots?
So apparently she was sitting next to my husband and she kicked him under the table and she goes, I see you've been teaching her Portuguese. So oh.
Muito bem, muito bem.
Yeah, muito bem. She's absolutely wonderful. That was very, very early on. There were so many funny things in that moment. I love to wear flowers, which actually you can see I'm wearing flowers today. So I wore this great flowered dress. But of course, people have so many misunderstandings about Brazil. And so when I stepped off the plane in my flowered dress, they were like, what does she think Brazil is like? So it was just a lot of fun stuff right there.
Well, thanks for
Christian,
having me. It's
oh,
awesome.
please, please. And I thought I would set an example because so many times people don't want to ask questions, sort of cross-cultural questions, because they're afraid it will belie like things they're supposed to know. And
Yeah.
so I will set that example because I realized, or it feels like I should know this. When you say I'm German by passport, but Bavarian by heart, all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, what's the difference between like German and Bavarian? I know they're
Mhm.
different. I should know. So I thought I would set an example by being like, I don't know. So I'm just going to ask you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
And as one of my mentors and friends reminded me, or keeps reminding me and taught me, a gentleman that you should definitely have on your show. His name is Pellegrino Riccardi, and by the name you can probably tell that he's from, yes, Great Britain, and he and he lives in Norway, and so he's tricultural: Italian, British, Norwegian, and he taught me that no question is off limits, no question is actually taboo if you ask it from a place of genuine curiosity and
Mhm.
without any hint of judgment. And I think that is often the
Mm.
challenge for people when they ask. They ask from a position of, I don't know, superiority or paternalistic instinct or even condescension. But if
Oh,
you
like
ask,
they're asking a question as though they
mhm,
already know the answer and they want to
right,
make a
right,
point with
yeah.
the question.
So
Sure.
where are you really from? You know, that
Mhm.
kind of question.
Mm.
So I'm really from Bavaria, which is one of the 16 states of the country of
Mhm.
Germany. It's the southeastern state. So most people who don't know very much about Germany have heard of the city of Munich, which is also
Mhm.
the capital of that state. And that's where I grew up. I grew up in a small town of 20,000 people just south of Munich, Bavaria, which is equidistant to the city and also to the border to our south with Austria, an entirely different country that also speaks German.
Mm,
So that is my cultural identities, because like Germany's like many other European countries, or many countries around the world, period, who are not homogenous in its culture, right? There are
for
regional
sure.
nuances. And I think it's important, if we talk about cultures, to, yes, let's look at the flag, let's look at the passport
Mhm.
name, but also let's be aware that there are nuances within a country that are sometimes bigger than internally different than they are with maybe their neighbors. So
Oh, sure. But that's true of like every country. I think of my husband being Brazilian. It's so funny, my husband doing his southern accent of like, "Hey,
mhm.
how y'all doing?" You know, just even within the US, it's so different regionally for
Right,
sure.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Mm,
that's what this is about. So I'm Bavarian. Sure, I'm German. I identify as German,
mhm,
but I will tell you that linguistically, and you brought your Portuguese
mhm.
or Brazilian Portuguese example. My dialect that we speak in our neck of the woods in Germany is closer to that German dialect people speak in Austria, a country with a different passport, a different
Mm,
nationality,
sure.
different legal system, than the cultures up north in northern Germany. We
Mhm.
The people in
Sure.
northern Germany and I, we share the same passport, but culturally speaking, we're probably a little bit more different than I would be to an Austrian.
Mhm. Wait, so was that yes or no? Okay, I'm just kidding. Because because that's the whole point. You know, when we look at identity and cultural identity, it's so complex. And what I find interesting, Christian, for you is that there's also another layer of that. And this is, I'm curious from you, you know, you've got sort of the culture guy as one brand, but then you also have the business, the culture mastery.
Right.
And if I look at your online presence, there's this really interesting flow between what some might consider the personal and the professional. So, how do you see that distinction? And then how does this intercultural aspect maybe permeate all of that?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a non-German answer. Probably I'm too
Mm,
Americanized by now. I think the personal and the professional bleed into each other more than I would have ever imagined.
mhm.
That nickname, the culture guy, I found it terribly hokey and terribly tacky.
Yeah, you
And
said someone else applied that to you. So
yeah,
that
yeah,
was not
I
your
didn't come up with this, because
mhm.
if I had bestowed it upon myself, it would have been
Yeah.
super cheesy. But I was part of a mastermind group many, many years ago, and the people in that mastermind group, when I did my introduction and somebody came in late and they said, "Well, who are you again?" And then I started to
Mhm.
give that spiel again, and after 20 seconds, she interrupted me and she said, "Oh, okay, got it. I know you. You're the culture guy." And
Mm.
ever since
Mhm.
then, people called me that. I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to label me as, if the shoe fits, I'll wear it.
Sure. Sure. But then so that is the well, and so actually then as far as I'm totally stammering. That's like where I actually have this thing where I play with myself on like coming up with a question if there's a question in there. Because what I'm curious about is you're talking about how you became the culture guy, but then you also oh, the fact that that's German or not. God, hello, I'm Deanna. Welcome to
Yeah, welcome.
Intercultural
I'm
Spark.
Christian.
Oh my God.
And
Are we
by the
here?
way, may I say thank you for giving it your best shot at pronouncing my name, which is super hard for non-German speakers, and you nailed it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Actually, you know what's so much fun though, and I do this for other for it's a great idea. It's because on your LinkedIn profile, you actually have I'm so excited, but you have a button where you pronounce it. But
Right.
names are so important because it's part of your identity, and particularly if someone speaks another language, it's Americans, US Americans, we often want to just be like, "Well, I'm just going to call you Jim." My
Yeah.
husband went by Jim the first like 5 years he was here because nobody could get Eugenio. Uh, Finally, he compromised on Geno or Gino. But it is interesting. Names are important.
Eugenio, that's Eugene, then I guess in English, right?
Oh my God. Or as my cousin Judy told him, like, oh, you mean Eugene? He was like, it's not fair. Like Eugene versus Eugenio.
Eugenio.
So yes, it is the the Portuguese equivalent of Eugene. So, yeah, that's funny, but that is something that people also don't do, you know, sometimes when you go cross-cultural, people either will look for offense, like, oh, they're not going to understand me, or like you did, I'm just going to help people. I'm just going to right out and say, this is how you do it. So,
Yeah, but I've given up. And
mhm.
I mean, my name is spelled, my last name is spelled with a letter that the English language doesn't have. It's a letter, it's the O with the two dots over it
Yeah.
that only exists in German and Swedish and I believe in Turkish. I think those are the three languages that have that letter. And the sound does not exist in the English language. So it is difficult for a non-German
Mhm.
speaker to make that happen. Um,
I actually
so
put it here on your Twitter, which it wouldn't show up on Twitter.
no, and Twitter, I actually have to dissolve it. So it's not the O umlaut on Twitter; it's actually OE. So if you use that
Ah,
letter
okay.
and instead spell it with OE,
Interesting.
in German it's the same pronunciation, and it saves Germans on international keyboards to still express the same sounds. But I deliberately kept my name spelling like you see here on that banner,
Mhm.
because it topples people. It trips them up, and they say, "Oh, what is this?" And I don't know how to write this, and how do you
Mhm.
say this? Because even if I spelled it in an anglicized way, I would still have to spell it, and people still
Wait,
ask
what do
me
you call that letter? So I
umlaut. It's an umlaut in German. It's called
oh,
an
an
umlaut. I don't know what the
umlaut.
Swedes call it. I think the Swedes just call it
Mhm.
an ö, and I don't know what the
Mhm.
Turks call it.
So, it's interesting, Christian, actually doing this show. So what I end up doing, because I feel like the way that you write your name is really important. It's your name. It's different. Like you said, it's even different pronunciations. So knowing that, I found that correct spelling, like either on your website or somewhere. And then every place that I've posted, I've actually copied and pasted because I wouldn't know how to type the umlaut.
Right.
So
There's a trick, there's a shortcut for QWERTY keyboards to create it, but I'm not going to bother you. But as you know, these type of letters have made their way into U.S. branding and U.S. marketing. Think of a band called Motorhead. Think of a ice cream brand that has a similar letter in it. Think of a shoe brand that has a similar letter in it. So U.S. marketers at some point found it
mm,
cute to include letters that don't exist in the English language to set themselves apart in the
mm,
busy marketplace. So I figured, well, why not keep using it? And people are going to ask me how to pronounce my name anyway, and then it's going to be a slaughterfest because it's not easy to say it if you don't speak German. So it's an ice breaking exercise
mhm. Sure.
regardless, right? So I get to talk about myself, or they get to ask me, well, what is this, and where are you from, and what does this mean, and how am I getting it wrong
Mhm.
or right? And so, and that's when we're talking.
So I'm going to go ahead. Speaking of ice, I'm going to take that as a transition because Brianna's got some great specific questions. But before we get to that, Brianna, which I love your questions, you have this whole thing that you do in your work with companies about ICE-Q. So
Mhm.
tell us what that is and why that's important
Yeah,
to consider.
thank you for that.
Mhm.
So I call it Ice Cube because Ice Cube is not the rapper, and even though he's a cool dude, it's also not. Um,
Wait, he's Ice T, isn't he?
well, there's Ice Cube,
Okay.
the rapper, and then there's Ice T. I happen to have met both of them in a
Oh.
previous career, and they're both lovely people. But it has nothing to do with that. So ICE-Q is an acronym which is the trifecta of what I call power skills. So it's IQ plus CQ plus EQ. So ICEQ. And I call it the trifecta of power skills and not soft skills. And I'm having to
Mhm.
convince myself saying it that way
Mhm.
because I don't like that term.
Sure. So I is intelligence, E is emotional. That's big now, but C is the new one that you don't already see, and that's your
Cultural intelligence.
cultural quotient.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the if you want to be successful in a global context, if you're working globally, if you're working outside of your own native culture, or if you're working with people who are from different cultures,
Mm.
IceQ is that set of power skills that you want to foster and develop within yourself and within your organization, because it combines your subject matter expertise with the intelligence about other cultures and how your culture interacts with those who are different, and the emotional intelligence to recognize personality traits and to recognize people's emotions, to recognize your own emotions, and being
Oh,
able
right,
to. to
Mhm.
harness them and align them with one another.
Sure. You know, it's interesting because what you're talking about is personality. Like the person before you always trumps what your trumps like any sort of rules that you have about different cultures. And even
I would
Brianna
say so, yes.
asks, how do you get around the nuances in a country where the same thing is good? And, I always do like the okay sign, like this is yay, okay, do
Yeah,
not
not
do
in
that.
Brazil.
Not in Brazil. I did that. I had so much fun making mistakes my first trip there when I'd asked for like a napkin and they brought it to me. I was like, "Great, thank you so much."
Yeah,
Um,
also the rock and roll, rock on sign,
yeah.
might be
Yeah.
different, might be different.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do you teach people or how does that play
Yeah.
out? Do you help people or just being aware of that?
Yes, yes. I think
Mhm.
and I don't do this by myself, right? There are cultures that I'm intimately familiar
Mhm.
with and that I um, allow myself to teach because I think I can speak from a position of authority and experience. And then there's other cultures that I simply am not the expert in. And we have team members and associates who do then exactly that. To your example, Deanna, I had a request from a company, from a US company,
Mhm.
and we've done work together before, and they call me and they say, we got this young couple moving from Brazil to Mexico for work, and would you help them with a cultural training? I said, yes, we
Mhm.
can, but it's not going to be me. I'm going to set my
Mm.
teammate up for this,
Mhm.
and she speaks Portuguese. She's Brazilian and she's lived in Mexico. So you don't want
Mhm.
me to do it. You want somebody to do it that really intimately knows the dynamics between those two cultures. And every myself and every associate that we work with knows this. I vet them. I do not work with people who paint with a broad brush. So everybody
Mhm.
that works with me knows that we pay attention to those in country nuances, right? So whether somebody's coming to the United States, they're not just getting a cultural briefing for the US. It really depends on where they're going. Are they going to California? Are they going to Silicon Valley? Are they going to the Pacific
Mm.
Northwest?
Sure.
Are they going to New England or the South or the Midwest? We got to prepare them for the the regional culture that they're going into and what the
Oh, it makes
specific
so much
and
sense. Sure.
the communicative preferences are in those respective regions.
Mhm.
I hope that
So
answered the question for Brianna.
Oh, I think it's just the idea that you're saying that it's you include regional training within. It's not just country specific.
Yes.
It's really what that person specifically needs. And I do just want to touch on that for a second because that goes back to business model. All my guests, it's micro entrepreneurs. It's smaller businesses, but people who are living lives. Building businesses. Like you said, you've got associates. We're employing people, but sometimes smaller. Let's say than a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So the way that you build a business is by products, whether that be services. It sounds like you do individual coaching or consulting with expats, I guess people that are moving here, maybe moving abroad. But what are some of the like what are your top 3
Yeah,
services?
the three pillars of the work
Yeah.
is to describe. We prepare expatriates for their international assignment, and that's usually
Okay.
one person on
Mm.
household. It
Mhm.
used to be companies would hire this one-on-one for their employee, and we tell them, nah, you want to include every member of the household, whether there's a spouse, maybe there's children,
Oh, for sure.
maybe there's even a parent or an in-law that
Mhm.
you're moving with the family, because
Sure.
depending on where people move from, that may be a part of the equation. So it's one on household, and that can be a training, that can be a coaching. In our case, it's often both. It's a hybrid.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
there is a knowledge transfer portion, and then there is an ongoing guidance portion that is usually 3 to 6 months. The second pillar would be multinational teams. So there's, no matter where they are in the world, there are teams who have multiple cultures
Mhm.
represented within them, and they need to find a better way to communicate with one another and streamline processes and figure out, how do we give feedback to one another, how do we
Mhm.
improve the work we do, how do we talk with one voice to the suppliers or to the customers, how do we create our marketing, all of that. That would be a multinational team. And the third pillar would be, it could be multicultural teams, can also be monocultural teams facing outward. So we worked with a client just last fall, a multi-billion-dollar client in the
Mhm.
flooring industry, and their team is mainly US folks, and they're interfacing a lot with Korea. and
Mhm.
they keep having their challenges in the interaction with their Korean suppliers and vendors. So then the group that we teach is fairly monocultural, but we brief them on how to improve their processes facing, in this case, their Korean counterparts.
Mhm. Actually, it reminds me one time when my husband was Motorola, they had brought over an entire team from Korea who we invited to our house. And in this case, actually, I had a friend who had been married to someone from Korea. So got all the, like, I bought the slippers were at the door when everyone came in. We
Nice.
did like the little cups for beer with the big bottles of beer. Like we learned all the little, not the little, actually, that is not fair, especially as an interculturalist, to call it the little. We learned all the touches that when those guests came to our home, they would immediately feel welcome.
Yeah.
And that's what, Christian, I'm thinking that we talk, especially in marketing, like you have a tenth of a second to make a good first impression. There's so many things culturally that you don't even realize that you've just like kind of stopped things right at the get go, strictly
Right.
just by even not knowing.
Right.
So,
And in all fairness,
mhm.
potentially your, in this case, Korean counterparts, they don't expect you to go full on Korean with them and start the night by
Mhm.
singing Gangnam Style. It's but they will recognize that you're doing everything within your
Yes.
power to accommodate to their preferences, and whether it be the slippers at the door, which hat tip to you, good job, um, and or not pouring your own drink, but pouring everybody else's drink
Yes, for
and waiting
everybody.
for them to,
Yeah.
or maybe have a bottle of soju in the fridge wouldn't hurt, or two or three, and but if you're showing these quote unquote little things, your counterparts who know that you're not Korean because you don't look the part, they will respect you for giving it your best shot. And even if you get it
Yes.
wrong
Yeah.
slightly, the there's so much goodwill you're buying in showing that you did your homework, which is a huge relationship
Mm,
building and trust building factor. And that's where a lot of business is built upon outside of North America and outside of Europe, is developing a level of mutual trust that goes far
sure.
beyond the transaction. And the transaction may not even happen without that level of trust. And those quote unquote little things build the bridge
Or what build
to
it.
building that
Sure.
trust, right?
Sure. I cannot believe this because I have so many other questions and Brianna has questions. But as our time is flying, I am going to jump to our flash
Boom.
photo stories. Boom. Oh, thank you for joining me in that exciting intro. What's interesting, so what this is the flash photo stories. I've asked Krishan to share 4 to 6 photos ahead of time. He's going to tell us a 1 to 2 sentence story about each. And actually, I don't know if you realize today is actually Holocaust Remembrance Day. So
Mhm.
I realized that when I realized, tell us about your. See, I just told the story for you. Sorry. That's
Yeah, no,
very,
no,
wait,
that's,
that's very Jewish American. Sorry.
hey, it's all good. It's all good. I'm
So
glad we're
yeah.
doing this on a Thursday, and I don't know. Do you do shows on Friday or do you observe the Shabbat?
Oh, so actually, no, I don't. In fact, I wrote an article for Interfaith Family, and it was how to act Jewish to raise a Jewish child because we raised our child Jewish. So it was all of a sudden that's when I finally joined a synagogue because I was like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I gotta pretend like I know what I'm doing.
Get
So
your tuchus in the temple, girl.
that's so funny. All
Yeah,
right, so
well,
tell yeah, what's going on here? What is this?
I'm not Jewish. I
Mhm,
am a Catholic goyim or a recovering Catholic. It's probably better. So I was raised Catholic, but I
mhm,
was raised in a country that is historically known, or whose history is known to have created and committed the biggest crime against humanity on record. And it's a history that we grew up with and we don't particularly enjoy. But I think especially my generation has made it part of their mission to acknowledge our history and face it like the demon that it is. And we stare
mhm,
our demon in the face and say, not you, and not again. And by the way, never again.
mhm.
So
Sure.
for me, it's important. This is one of the reasons why I do the work, right?
Mhm,
Germany went into 2 devastating world wars in the 20th century, the second of which based on a xenophobic ideology that is anti-Semitic and anti-humanitarian, and I think, and I'm a strong believer that conflicts between people, and we can see it again in Ukraine with the Russian aggression. Conflicts between people escalate because people fail to recognize one another's culture and have a deeper understanding of what the underlying drivers of behaviors are. So that goes far deeper than do's and don'ts. It goes about it's about values, it's about belief systems, it's about deeply held convictions. So this is a picture of a Holocaust memorial site in Schwäbisch Hall in southwestern Germany. I did some work there several years ago, and when I learned that they had this Gedenkstätte, this memorial site in Hessenthal, I made it a point after work to go there and just meditate and recognize the pain of the victims, recognize the deed that has been done, but also being at peace with knowing that we've matured from this, and that we as a country, as a culture, are doing what's within our power to honor the pain of the victims.
And that empathy, sorry to jump ahead to the next one, but yes, that whole idea of empathy and understanding how people feel from their perspective really is a core tenet when we look at intercultural appreciation and connection.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's going on here?
Well, I'm a fan of bridges. I don't like walls. Again, Germany is a country that had a big wall. We know it didn't work. Bridges work a lot better, I think. And this is Pont Neuf, a bridge crossing the Seine River in Paris. And I thought this was a cute picture of me in a bridge. And Pont Neuf, I mean, if you haven't watched the movie The Lovers of Pont Neuf, you should. It's an iconic bridge in Paris.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'll take a look at it. You know, this is fun when we talk to it, because I know you're active on social media, but this is also a great way, just when people go, what do I post on social media? The fact that one of your biggest messages is from walls to bridges, like even something like this, when you post that, gets your message out there quickly. So, and it's called The Lovers of Pont Neuf.
I think that's the title of the movie. I have to figure out. I don't remember. There was a movie in the I want to say in the 90s. And Pont Neuf is every Parisian knows Pont Neuf. It's one of the bridges crossing the Seine, and it's close to the Ile de Notre Dame. So it's if you've been in Paris, you probably saw the bridge.
Oh, the bridges. Go to Paris, do the boat ride on the Seine. You go under all the bridges. It's spectacular. So
magnifique.
Yes. What is this?
This is the view into the Fitztal, or as the Italians call it, Val di Fize. This is in South Tyrol, and this is at my happy place. I'm not going to disclose the exact location because it's my family secret, but it's in South Tyrol, a bilingual, bicultural area on the southern side of the Alps, where Germanic and Italian cultures have met for hundreds of years. And the food is great, the people are great, the wine is great, the air is great, the mountains are great. It is beautiful, and this is my very, very happy place.
Oh, see, now you're going to have everybody going like, "Tell us, no, what is it? I want to know."
Well, I will tell you privately. I'm not.
Look at this. Thank you. Someone shared the. Oh,
that's the French title, Le Mont du Pont Neuf. Thank you very much.
That's my friend Nancy. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And this is me and my better half. This is Brigitte, my wife of 21 years. And, well, this exemplifies our two energies. She's the go-getter, sparky person. I'm the skeptic and maybe the naysayer once in a while. I think this expresses the dynamic that the two of us have. And we occasionally work together, so we are a power duo.
I love it. Actually, did you guys do a photo shoot together, or was this when you were working together?
Shoot. This was
just
a photo
adorable.
Shoot we did. Yeah.
So absolutely adorable. What's happening here?
I'm on stage and somebody took a snapshot. Apparently, I was being very animated about something. So this is at a training event with, I don't know, a couple of hundred people in the room, and you can see I'm mic'd up, which doesn't happen much. And this is pre-COVID, obviously. Presently, we don't do events like that, but I'll be in Zurich next month at an event with apparently 170 people. So I think we're going back there.
What's the topic when you present? Like, what's a sample topic that you present on?
It would be, in this case, efficient communication across cultures. The company that's flying me to Zurich, they have, I think, 25 different cultures within their organization. They're truly international team,
Wow.
and they're all coming together for this event in Zurich, and it's going to be a hoot. Where we're going to do some exercises with them, and it's less lecturing, more
Like hands-on, sort
interaction.
of
Yeah, yeah.
interactive.
Yeah, and this is me reading a book about the gentleman that I would call the patron saint of interculturalists. Remember, recovering Catholic, so we have the saints. Anthony Bourdain, to me, is the
So
patron saint
wonderful.
of
Yeah.
interculturalists, and I was shocked and moved to tears when I learned about his suicide. And I'm a huge fan. I'm probably the world's biggest fanboy.
Sure. So we are now. We're going to have you back because Brianna's got fantastic questions about like a specific big transformation that you've seen between two groups. I'm going to pull up. I don't know. That doesn't strike me as something that you can answer fast because we are ready for our flash exercise.
Ooh.
So why don't we do that first, and then if we have one sample that you can say of a transportation, like one that you remembered, we'll do that. So here's our exercise. All right. So the exercise is: I am also a certified group fitness instructor, and there's a little known genre called interpretive aerobics. So I am going to teach an exercise that we can do at our desk. I'm going to make myself full screen to do that. Then I'm going to invite you back to do it with me. And then you can guess why I picked this exercise for our show today. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right.
Should I be scared?
No, you should be. No, wait. You're in the hands of a professional, so you're good. You're in good hands.
Good.
I am going to. You can use weights. I don't have weights, but I do seem to have these two. You can use like cans. You can use weights. So this is an exercise you could do with weights. So I am going to stand up. You do not have to stand up. This is a bicep exercise. So we're going to do 3 versions of it. The first one, so elbows under shoulders. Keep your shoulder to elbow isolated. You're just going to lift hands straight up. Your range of motion is thigh to shoulder. Second one, you're going to rotate out about 45 degrees. You're going thigh to shoulder as well. And then the third one, you're going to lean slightly forward and just use your biceps to push your arms up. So from the side, you're just lifting right like that. So you've got a bicep to the front, bicep to the side, and then push back. I'm going to bring you back.
I found some weights. I found books by Edward T. Hall, one of the pioneers in our field. So beyond culture and the hidden element. Excuse me, Sir Hall, but I'll use you as weights.
Books is a great way to use for exercise. Oh, you got it. So we got front. All right, there you go. Now same thing to the side. There you go, right there. And now lean slightly forward and just push your biceps. Yes, there you go. Okay. So your biceps are now stronger. Can you guess why I used that exercise for this show?
I can't wait to hear your explanation. So I'm not going to steal your thunder. I don't know.
Okay. So here's the thing. Training is fiber specific. So when we do biceps to the front, we exercise some part of our bicep. Side is another, pushing up is another. And so when we look at different perspectives and change our view of things, we actually grow. We're better for it. And of course, biceps are those muscles we use to lift stuff. So having strong biceps also, which would be these different perspectives, makes the whole organization stronger.
You know what? I usually have a rubber band here at my desk or around my wrist when I go to clients, because I tell them exactly this. Your behavioral bandwidth in the beginning is like this, but it's like a muscle. You can stretch it like your muscle fiber. You can expand your zone of appropriate behaviors. So excellent choice of exercise.
Thank you. We are out of time. Do you have one example for Brianna in terms of just one thing that you saw where you went, aha, they get it? Was there a moment that you saw like that?
We had a long project with a German chemical manufacturer who did a greenfield project in the Southeast in Tennessee, hired hundreds of locals, country boys from Tennessee. And since the factory wasn't built yet, they sent them to Germany so they could train at the factory in Germany. And they were scared out of their minds because they had never been out of the country. And when they came back after 6-8 months, they all had bought a pair of lederhosen. So they bought the local traditional garb of the Bavarians, and they loved it. So I would say this was a successful transformation for them.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This was delightful. Oh shoot. I'll put in the comments that you have like a daily show. It's what is it? Two Chaps, Many Cultures, which
Yeah, we
is
do that with
really
Brett.
talking about
Yeah.
all different things. I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes because
you.
there is so much more in depth about Christian Höferle that everyone will want to know. Thank you. So thank you so much for being here. And for everyone else, we will see you next week on Intercultural Spark.
Thanks. Ciao for now. Be good,
Bye-bye.
people.